All right, item number 2, approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda as circulated? Counselor, where did it go? Counselor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add derelict or empty buildings in the municipality, please.
All right, we'll put that under new business, item 6.2. I'll just put derelict buildings. Counselor Daniel Allen, you have the floor.
Yes, I would like to bring up mowing of lawns, and there'll be more context to it when we get to it, but Councillor Herbert just reminded me of something when she came in today, and it's in relation to if we have any policy on lawn mowing and where the grass can be, discharged.
All right, so I'll add item 6.3, mowing of lawns, and I'll put your name next to that. Is there any other additions to deletions to the agenda as amended? If not, I'd entertain a motion to move the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. A motion on the floor to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 3, declarations of conflict of interest. If there's any declarations of conflict of interest and anything that comes up, please let me know and we'll get the recording secretary to note that in the meeting minutes. Item number 4, approval of the minutes. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the special council meeting of April 29th, 2021, special council minutes of May the 6th, 2021, special council minutes of May 17th, 2021, regular council minutes of May 26th, 2021, committee of the whole minutes for June 9th, 2021, and regular council minutes of June 9th for 2021.
Okay, a motion on the floor by Councillor Nick Hilton to move those minutes. We'll have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 5, old business. 5.1, recommendations from Committee of the Whole. 5.1.1, draft access to information policy A-033-21. You all have the recommendation in front of council. What is the wishes? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Right. I'll move that the Municipality District of Yarmouth approve the access to information policy A-033-21.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.2, Design Point Modi Sidewalk Project. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
I would like to make the motion that we approve the moving forward with the 3 sidewalk projects for tender.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those, Deputy Warden, you wish to speak on that? You have the floor.
Yes, we spoke at length during the Committee of the Whole, but for the public that has not was not in attendance at the meeting online, just like to mention that those certainly those sidewalks are important, and we've got a busy residential area and business area, and business districts and schools and all those types of things in those areas, and those projects are important to move forward. So just add that before we vote in the affirmative, I would expect. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
My apologies, I should have asked this while I was speaking, but through you to our CEO, where are they in terms of the design line, in terms of getting the environmental approval for those projects before we go to tender?
So I haven't connected with the consultants since they presented to committee of the whole. It's my understanding they're still working out the final details with respect to environment as well as the power utility before they finalize the tender documents. But the tender documents are in draft form, just waiting for those finer points to be added to it before they get released.
All right, moving on. Item 5.1.3, correspondence from a Yarmouth Environmental Think Tank. You all have there in front of you the recommendation. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
I'd like to make a motion, please, that we formulate a plan to work with Waste Check to provide funding to community groups for waste pickup.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Nope. Councillor Patty Durkee?
Sorry, it was, I just want to throw in that I appreciated that received a letter from Stephen Salos with regards to the waste problem that we've been having in the community, and that I was able to tell him that we were already working on this, so he was quite pleased about that. The other concern was the bylaw about dumping, and that we need to enforce that a little better than we've been doing so, if that's where we are with it.
Okay, thank you. You finished? No need to apologize for the floor, Councillor Durkee. It's your right. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too would like to acknowledge Mr. Salos for all his work in my community and in our community. He organizes a yearly ditch cleaning almost of the entire community of Chabot, so he's a great resident and cares deeply for his community. I too want to echo both what the Yarmouth think tanks have talked about, what Mr. Salos have talked about, that illegal dumping and littering is, there's no excuse for it, and we need to continue to increase policies and bylaws around this to try to improve the situation. So the step towards working with the Waste Check to help fund community groups to do some of that work is great, but I still think we need stronger enforcement of the reverse onus bylaw. I would like to see that at some point in the future, as well as planning for the spring to organize a county-wide initiative to clean up our ditches. So I would ask maybe that the CAO put on for committee of the whole in January a littering program of sorts, or discussion around that, so that we can plan for when the snow is gone, that we can do some work. But I do think this is a great first step, but it is a first step. So thank you very much.
Any more discussion? My apologies, Council. I somehow forgot how to use our microphone system since we've been in COVID lockdown. Since there's no more discussion, entertain the question on the motion. Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.4, correspondence from the Highland Gun Club. You all have in there the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. What is the wishes of council?
Mr. Chair, if I could just,
Yes.
so
Go
if
ahead.
you vote in favor of this motion tonight, what will happen is I will be bringing your tax exemption bylaw to you for first and second reading, because it's a material change to the appendix. So just so you know what it means, if you vote in favor of it tonight, we're actually just going to move into a bylaw amendment process.
All right, Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
So I'll move that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth that we grant the requested tax exemption in the 2022-23 tax year, and it's understood that would be an ongoing granting of a tax exemption.
Motion on the floor, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Question?
Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.5, research on community beautification. You all have that in front of us. Councillor Patty Durkee.
I'd like to make a motion that we invite Communities in Bloom to present at a future Committee of the Whole meeting.
All right, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion? First one up on the docket is Councillor Nick Hilton. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So excited for this presentation. We've been talking about what community beautification would look like. I think it's really started at Christmas with the possibility of hanging Christmas lights in each community. So I think, again, this is a first step. I was drafted this week to help with the Communities in Bloom program at the Mariner Center. I thought it was great. The volunteers were great. They're excited to do the work for the community. I mentioned that we had this discussion, and they were looking forward to presenting to our council and being a part of our municipality as well. So I think it's an exciting step, but it's a first step. So I also would like to make a request that in September we put on Committee of the Whole a discussion around community decorations for the Christmas break. Can I put that on Committee of the Whole?
Yes, go ahead, Madam CEO.
So, I mean, we absolutely can do that, but I was under the understanding that through our strategic plan, we were going to take a broader look at community beautification initiatives and create some policy framework around how that would happen. So, not sure how your suggestion would fit in or around that piece.
I think it's very similar, but if you want to bring that to the table in September, that would be great as well. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am also excited about hearing from Communities in Bloom. I know for a fact that they have been wanting to work with the municipality of the District of Yarmouth to get involved in helping us with organizing some beautification in our communities. And I too agree with Councillor Hilton that this is just a first step in moving forward and looking at our various communities and how we can acknowledge and celebrate some of the unique attributes that they have to offer. I would also like to just further, through you to our CAO, the Chamber of Commerce has actually come out with shop local flags that they have been putting in town, and apparently we have received some of them, and if we need more, we can. And I'm just wondering if there's been any movement, information from Mark on being able to put them up on some of our poles.
So we don't own any poles, and we need
Yes, not our
Yep.
poles.
And so we have identified which poles belong to a telecom utility and which poles belong to a power utility. In the areas where we were originally looking, there are no telecom poles, they all belong to the power utility, and we have been denied permission to put the brackets on the poles and hang the flags. So I'm not sure what the next steps look like. It could be that we were only given 6 of the flags, and as you said, we could get more. It could be that Mark will just make them available to businesses, and maybe businesses can put them on their own property. It's not an initiative that we were planning on, so it costs money, thousands of dollars, to hire a vendor to buy those brackets and install them. We certainly didn't forecast this in our work plan for this year. If we start in one area, as you've mentioned, it would be of interest to other areas, and so it becomes quite a big initiative that kind of just came out of left field for us. So knowing that the power utility has denied permission for us to do it in the Hebron-Dayton corridor, it would be the same answer in any corridor. And so Mark and I haven't revisited it this week, but I've asked him to just leave it with me till I think about how it fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, and I'm thinking as well that that is part of a bigger picture in terms of, even considering putting up, we talked about Christmas holiday decorations and future communities in bloom thing and what direction we have to go. So, it might be, if it can't happen at this point, I think that we could look at something down the line as part of the bigger picture and part of the bigger placemaking that we have on our strategic plan.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the sentiments of the other two councillors and the CAO. I think it's something that we shouldn't take off of our radar, and I agree with Councillor Durkee. Our strategic plan does talk about placemaking. I think each individual community have unique things to that community to offer. So this is Communities in Bloom, I think, is a great start, and I know that investments are probably going to have to be made, but not waiting until December to start a conversation again. So just not letting it fall off our radar is what really I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion? Hearing none? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.6, summer meeting schedule. You all have that in your package, the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Right, I'll move that the municipality district of Yarmouth hold one committee of the whole meeting in July and one committee of the whole meeting in August to follow the regular meeting schedule. So we'd have two committee of the whole meetings and potentially a regular council meeting after too. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being,
Sorry.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although I appreciate, having fewer meetings in the summer, I voiced my concern that as a new councillor, and I understand the obligation that I've undertook, but totaling out the number of hours that I've spent in daytime meetings, I think, it would be beneficial for us, because we have people who do work full-time jobs Monday to Friday, to have a future discussion, maybe, August, September, to come up with some ways to maybe alleviate some of those daytime, even later start days, later start times of 3 or 4 would be maybe even a little more accommodating for for the majority of us who do have full-time jobs. Thank you.
Okay, the next one on the docket would be Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too, like Sherry, have a full-time job that work Monday to Friday, and although I'm extremely excited to be part of this council, when we started, we talked about rearranging dates. Never did, and that's fine. We've made it work, but at the last meeting, Councillor Cunningham did make the suggestion about later day meetings, and it never really had any intake. I realize that there are things that happen after supper for other councillors, or people are just hungry, but for us, that workday meetings, it is more difficult, and I do struggle to have this issue in a public forum. It's just a scheduling problem. Hopefully we can maybe take into consideration our work schedules a little bit more at some point. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, in terms of scheduling and our meetings, I would just like to comment that some of our meetings are running very long, and that particularly during committee of the whole meetings, if we could keep Once people have presented, if we could keep it to questions only and rather than long-winded discussions about some of the things, it might be of benefit to all of us, just to, keep it to questions instead of all the stuff that goes before. When we speak to our presenters, if we could just question them as opposed to telling stories or relations and things.
Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm hearing what folks are saying, and so I guess we had talked a little bit about a later in the day meeting, and then, later in the afternoon, and then it would be a kind of a middle ground. Having said that, probably I'd make a recommendation to put that on the agenda for the maybe July or either July or August meeting as an agenda item. So then we'd have things cleared and underway for if there are any changes to the meeting schedule or agendas. We do that work during the summer, during one of those 2 committee of the whole meetings, and be ready for September. So that's my recommendation. So let's put that on one of those 2 agendas, and I'll call a question if there's no more.
Is there any more comments on this? I fully understand. I said at the very start of this council that the meetings, this is your council. We should meet. I agree with Councillor Durkee that in regards to the presentators, sometimes they do go a little bit long. Our last committee of the whole meeting was extremely long. And to go to Councillor Sherry Hurlbert's point, I think that we can modify the schedule somehow that we can have the meetings a little bit later in the day. Since the COVID-19 lockdowns are happening, something that you guys, that the new council, I shouldn't say you guys, the newer councilors haven't seen is usually summertime's barbecue season, and your time is taken up a lot in the summertime, even in the falls and winter times. There's a lot of events going on, whether it's at community halls, fire halls, anything like that, family gatherings. Usually as councilors, that's when we go out and make your presence known. As a politician, you're always out campaigning, so it's an awfully fine balance, and I'm willing to work with everyone to try to find a balance. And also, we got to remember too that some presenters can only present in mornings and afternoons, and maybe it'd be some sort of hybrid schedule, but that's something that we can discuss on a later date, in my opinion. If not, is there any more comments? I had the question called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.7, Heritage Incentive Program Policy H-048-21. You all have that in your package along with the recommendation. What is the wishes of the council? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion that we approve the Heritage Incentive Program Policy H-048-21.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Durkee, your mic is on. Okay, so Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the CAO, I was approached last night at a community meeting from an organization who owns a heritage property, and they were asking if the deadline for applications is June 30th, and we're only passing this tonight. Does that mean this doesn't come in? I guess, and I wasn't 100% sure on the answer, so I thought I would ask for clarity.
Yep, so when we launch this publicly through our electronic media, because this is the first year and it's a brand new program, we probably would just take in applications, by the end of September this year. But now that it's in place, we would just let people know that by June every year, we just would like to have your application in. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item 5.1.8, flag policy F-046-21. You have the recommendation and also correspondence from Joe Bashir from the Tri-County Regional Education. What is the wishes of council? First one up, it would be Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
I would like to make a motion that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth approve the flag policy F-046-21 as revised.
All right, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Hurlbert, your mic is still on, therefore you could have the floor if you wanted it. Next one up, Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The flag policy is one of the first working documents we brought out of our strategic plan. It is more than just a flag policy. It is the start of how we are going to work on our diversity and inclusion pillar as part of that plan. I've talked to multiple people in our community, including Joe Bashir. That letter was sent in March and unfortunately never made it and was not received by the municipality. And in that letter, it talks specifically about the importance of where the flagpole is located. We have 3 flagpoles outside of our municipality building in a position of power, and we talk now about putting a flagpole at the bottom of the hill for special organizations and marginalized groups. And in speaking to these groups, in speaking to Joe, who is in his job is in equity consulting, posting or flying a flag for these groups at a lower level can be viewed negatively. So I will not be supporting the policy as it is. I watched the town fly the First Nations flag on their flagpole this week. We watched them fly the transgender flag on their flagpole in place of the town flag 2 months ago. If we are truly going to recognize these groups, we need to be uniform across the board and put them in the same position of power that we would put ourselves in. So although I support the idea of the policy, it still needs revisions. We need to bring these people to the table. And I shouldn't say these people, we should bring all community members to the table and ask them what they see as inclusiveness. And the CAO can speak to this. I don't think we've done that to this point. I think it's really important that we do this because we have 2 letters from one from a local group and another one from an educator saying that although we're making positive steps, we haven't done it correctly yet. Thank you.
You made reference, Councillor, to the CAO, so I'm going to turn the floor over to her.
So I want to thank Councillor Hilton for engaging with this group and seeing that the correspondence got to your desk. Not sure what happened to it, but we have it now and it's entered into the record. And as I read, you know, what Mr. Bashir wrote to us, I actually was a little bit encouraged. So Councillor Hilton made reference to a community pole being placed at the foot of the hill, and I understand the motion to be that the flagpole would have to be placed on the grounds of the administration building. So I've been working with the Director of Recreation, and we've been walking the premises, and there are a whole host of issues that we need to be mindful of when we implement this project. And so a place of status, accessibility, visibility, parking, safety for anybody who might want to congregate around the pole or sit by the pole and reflect. All those things have to be considered. And so, you know, what's been recommended and what I would intend to do if council approved this is we would actually have a pole on our front lawn, which is where our holiday tree goes, which is a place of honor. And we would actually make an installation. The District of Digby has it on their front lawn. So they have a hard surface walkway out from their parking lot, so it's accessible. They have an area around their flagpole that's beautified. It's uplit at night. There are benches. So I would agree with Mr. Bashara that if we're going to do this, the adjacency to this building as a seat of government is really important. It sends a message. And so doing the project and doing it in the right way is incredibly important. And so I would agree with Mr. Bashara on that front. And I would suggest that, you know, if we move ahead with an installation along those lines, we are, as Councillor Hilton said, taking some important first steps in our diversity and inclusion work, but also in placemaking. That creates another place for community to congregate on our grounds. So, you know, I feel like we're on the right track on this one.
All right, the next one on the docket here would be Councillor Patty Durkee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we table approval of this policy to the next meeting, and in the meantime, that we form or have a meeting with some of the individuals who have commented or sent letters to us to get their perspective on what we're doing to make sure, like you said, we feel like we're doing the right thing, but are we doing the right thing? And if we're not doing the right thing, I would rather not move forward with the project until we hear from those individuals who are who do feel marginalized and that haven't been recognizing.
Councillor, before you turn off your mic, oops. Yeah, so I'm going to turn you back on because you made reference, you had said, I am wondering if, so if we should table this. So
Yes.
I'm questioning right now, are you making a motion to table this?
I am making a motion to table this, yes. I wasn't sure the process, so that's why I said I'm
So
making.
it would be an amendment to the
amendment.
main, it would be amendment to the main motion. I'm just being very crystal clear.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Councillor Patty Durkee is making an amendment to the motion to table this.
Mr. Chair, it's not an amendment, it's actually a motion to table, so it's a motion of its own.
So it is a motion of its own.
Yep, and so if it's seconded and it passes, then the main motion would rest until the next meeting and it would come up on the agenda for debate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are you making that?
I am making that motion.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. So, is there any discussion on that motion? I'm going to go through the docket here. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After making the recommendation to approve and hearing some comments and hearing what the CAO said about placement, I pulled out my cheat sheet of how I take back the motion to approve, but Councillor Durkee has already said we can table it and we'll visit at a different site. So I don't need my cheat sheet anymore, right? All I'm saying is I'm fine to leave it until further discussion has been made with community members and we can solidify where the flagpole is going. I think it's a great, first step, like everyone else has said, but we need to make sure we're getting it right, and to push it through tonight just for the sake of pushing it through really defeats the purpose of listening and hearing, not only listening, but hearing what our community has to say. So I don't need the cheat sheet.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank Councillor Durkee and our warden for tabling that, or possibly tabling that for the time being. And I know that some of these individuals are watching tonight, and I think that they would be happy with that decision. And I look forward to that meeting, and if I could be a part of that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on that motion? And before I call for the question, I want to be crystal clear on the intent of the motion. So Councillor Durkee, if you could turn on the motion, because I have a question for you. So the main reason why you made this motion is to gain information from different groups on the placement, or that's exactly what we're voting on, correct?
The reason is, I would like to, before we even move forward with a new flagpole, I would like to have some input from community members, whether that would be an acceptable process, and if not, we need to understand why, and possibly not move forward with a new flagpole, but use one of the ones that we have. So I think that what I'm basically saying is I would like to see consultation first before we move forward with any new erecting of any new flagpoles.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, respectfully, so if we could vote on the motion to table, and then maybe, Councillor Durkee, if you wouldn't mind making a motion to that effect that we consult, that would be
Sure.
great.
That works for me. Sure.
Okay,
So the
so-
first motion is basically that we table the flag policy F-046-21 to the next regular council meeting.
Okay. So everyone clear on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Councillor Durkee?
So I would like to make a motion that we meet with community members who have a stake in our flag policy.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Is there any discussion on that motion? I do have one question. Are we going to advertise this through social media, or is there going to be?
So we'll probably use a focus group approach. It needs to be a safe environment. So we'll probably use a focus group approach, much like we did for the festivals and events policy, something modeled after that.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. Thank you. So is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Durkee. It's very important that we get this right. And council for everything. Okay, moving on. Item 5.1.9, Remo bylaw. You all have the recommendation in front of you. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion that the Remo bylaw be forwarded. Oh, it is forwarded. So I guess this is for first reading. Is there a title more than Remo bylaw, or is that?
R-036-21.
Can I? Yes. I'll make the motion if you prepare the motion for me.
So Councillor Hilton, the Regional Emergency Management Bylaw number is R-036-21.
And we're,
Approved first reading.
yeah, approved first reading of such bylaw. Thank you.
I have to read, Councillor, because it's not on my page
It's
either.
not on the paper.
But it's on the bylaw.
It is on the bylaw, correct.
We need
Okay, a motion on the,
two screens. We need two screens.
a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder to approve first reading? Moved by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Who has more fun than people, right? Item 5.110, festivals and events policy F-045-21. You all have in front of you the recommendation. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Man, I'm bringing up a lot of these policies here. I'll make a motion that we approve festival and events policy F-045-21.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question? Counselor Durkee.
It's actually not even a question, but I want to thank our CAO and staff for the efforts put forward to update this festival and events policy, because I know it's really important to Yarmouth and Acadian Shores and any other organization that are willing to host a festival or event in the future. So thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 5.1.11, municipal grants application by the Tri-County Women's Center. You all have in front of you the recommendation. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden.
Yes, I'll move that the municipality district of Yarmouth grant $3,000 from our contingency fund to the Tri-County Women's Center for the 21-22 fiscal.
Moved by Deputy Warden, seconded by Councilor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? I don't see any microphones on, but I'm going to say one thing. I stated at the committee of the whole when we discussed this, I thought it was too much. It was using almost half of our reserves in our grants, and I'm afraid, and since this is so early in the year, I'm very afraid that this might be a little much. So I will be voting against the motion, as I did in the committee of the whole. Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. There's no doubt in my mind, or anybody's mind sitting around this table here tonight, or the people who are viewing, that the Tri-County Women's Center is a very important and vital organization within our municipality of Yarmouth and also within Yarmouth County as a whole. In saying this, and beyond, I think it's Tri-County, so it includes Digby and Shelburne also. During our grant discussions, we had a $7,500 contingency fund. And if we turn around and give the Tri-County Women's Center $3,000 of that, we're just fresh in the year of 2021. And we do not know if any other groups will require emergency funding or asking for grants that we may consider. Therefore, as I said, I'm a very strong supporter of the Tri-County Women's Center and what they do in the Tri-Counties as well as the municipality of Yarmouth and Yarmouth County as a whole. I find that the $3,000 is under half of our contingency fund, and I'm kind of concerned that if other groups come forward, you know, we may have to say no to them if there's no contingency fund left. So I am suggesting that we, you know, that we reduce the $3,000 to a $1,500 one. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Are you making that a recommendation, or are you making that amendment?
I'm making it as a recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I made the original request for $3,000 at the committee of the whole. I know it's early in the year, but in my eyes, we shouldn't be viewing timeline and what may occur from another organization and hold it against this organization. The presentation we received was a great presentation. The work that they do is valuable to our community. I agree that maybe some of the other municipalities need to get on board and support them as well, and I'm sure they already are. I am very comfortable with the $3,000 for the Tri-County Women's Center. I'll be voting in favor of the $3,000. It is $3,000 of the $7,500 contingency, but we also have, there's also another $2,000 in that process that was never awarded. So we still have options, and I think we can work through this as well as support them. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Nay. Motion carried. I think there was one, at least, one or two. Two opposed. 5-4, 2 opposed. Thank you very much, council. Item 5.2, economic impact conversation update in regards to the lobster industry. Madam CAO, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just wanted to provide a verbal update. At the last regular council meeting, I was asked to make a few phone calls and make a few inquiries as to what type of data might be available to tell the big picture in terms of economic impact of the lobster fishery for Southwest Nova. And so I did that. I made a few phone calls, and if you recall, I had shared that night that I was aware that there was a lot of data available. I just wasn't sure if it had been collected to tell the whole story, if analysis had been done. I didn't know what shape the data was in, at what level, and all that. And so I was right. There's a lot of different pieces of data that have been collected kind of ad hoc or a la carte, but it hasn't been put together kind of to tell the whole story. So I spoke with Angelique at the Western Wren, and because it's an important sector in our region and it does fit within their strategy, maybe to understand kind of what is the narrative, what is the story, you know, like how many jobs, how many secondary jobs, how many primary export dollars, how many spin-off dollars, all those kinds of things. They're going to do as much work as they can do to try and thread the story together with the data that they have access to. Evan has said that it'll be sometime in July before he has that for me, but he's working on it now, and then I can bring it to you and you can decide what you might like to think about doing for next steps.
Councillor Allen.
I just want to say through you to our CAO, thank you very much. I realize this is a really large undertaking, or I thought it would be a really large undertaking, and to hear that we may have some information by July surprises me, but I'm excited to hear what it comes out of it. I thought this may be something that would go down the road, that we may have to seek funding for some type of special, you know, impact assessment. I didn't know if we'd have to go that route, and that, I guess at that point, I think we would have had to reach out to provincial partners as well as other municipal partners to cover that. I would have been more than happy to ask. I think we would have been met with acceptance. I've heard on numerous occasions that we all know that the fishing industry is a backbone of Southwest Nova Scotia, but I think that numbers don't lie, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just to Councillor Allen. So, you know, I don't know what level of detail we're going to get. I don't, you know, there could be a desire, you know, or a need to justify going to that next step and investing in more detail, but we'll see what we have come July, and then council can decide what they want to do from there.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday in Saltwater, they actually had an article that caught my eye, and then further read it, and I just forwarded it to the other councillors and CAO and the clerk. It says, highest quality lobster, a priority to sustain Nova Scotia's lucrative export. And quickly reading through it, and you can read through it at your leisure, but it talks about total employment in the sector in 2018 was over 18,000 workers, and in 2019 more than 51,000 tons of lobster valued at $888 million was landed in Nova Scotia, representing 49% of Canadian landings. Then it goes on to talk about more stats and where they get those from, so definitely a topic to continue, you know, to keep on our radar.
Thank you very much. Counselor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No disrespect to anybody, but what I'd like to know is, once we got this data, how would we use that? What would be the purposes? We're a municipal unit, it's very big in the federal eyes, et cetera. So I'd like to have suggestions of how, before we even went to undertaking, putting money or anything into a study, I would like to know what, I mean, we know that it is the backbone of our economy. What I want to know is, once we have this information, what is our intent? Like, what would we do with it?
Okay, next one on the docket would be Counselor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Councillor Jerry, you made a very good point there. I think this is my feeling. The point of this exercise is to let the people know, the citizens know of Yarmouth County, the importance of the fishing industry. We all know, we all hear about it, we all talk about it. But if we have actual facts that our citizens in Yarmouth County can actually look at and have a clear understanding how important the fishing industry is in our areas. Most of our districts, I would say probably Councillor Trevor Cunningham and Councillor Sherry Holabird are probably about the only ones who do not have any type of fishing industry in their districts, but the rest of us do. So I think it's important for our citizens in those districts who represent fishing communities are able to actually see the information, although it may cost some money for us to do at the end of the day. I think it's just very important information to have out there for people to see and for people to understand the importance of our fishing industry in our area. Thank you.
Next one would be Counselor Daniel Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a great question, Councillor Durkee. So I'm going to try and shed what little bit of light I can give you on it. I'm going to disagree with Lauren. I don't believe any of us aren't from a fishing community. I believe we're all from fishing communities. I know fishermen that live in every community. I think you probably would too. I think this information, similar to what we do for tourism and all that, is information that we can relay to the government, because there could be programs and things that could come out to help the fishing sector with production, with keeping lobsters, with keeping other types of fish. We have aquaculture that's looking to start up. We have things like that. And I'm thinking that showing the importance of it in this area, especially to the federal government. We have small crafts and harbors, and you have a wharf in your area that needs work. We need ways to show them how valuable this industry is to our end of the province, and that it needs to stay, and we need money to support some stuff. And I don't believe at this point in time that our small crafts and harbors, for example, gets the money it needs to support the industry that they have to support. And without this industry, and it's going to come to conservation as well, and without this industry and the money that's around here and what we need to keep it going, not just for conservation, but to actually make it happen, I think is hugely important to our area. And I can't imagine, I think it's great for everyone. It's great for the fishing industry, it's great for the people that own the businesses in the town of Yarmouth, the restaurants, the car dealerships, the hotels. It's great. It should be great for everyone. First Nations, everyone should want this information to the federal government so they know exactly what they're dealing with down on this end of the country in southwest Nova Scotia. And maybe they could provide some funding to help this industry thrive, survive a long time, and just make it work for everyone.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Allen. We certainly do all have lots of people involved in the fishing industry, either directly or indirectly, certainly. And I know what Lauren's speaking to in terms of not having any like physical wharf facilities and stuff like that in like Dayton, Hebron, and although I have a dog, but that's it. There's no lobster boats there. And same with South Ohio and up John's Way too. So no, none of that. But having said that, it is, Councillor Hurlbert did mention, you know, it's an $800 million industry, and it's gotten bigger. The price, everybody knows, has gone up over the last little bit. The markets are more global than they ever were, or never have been, and will probably continue to be that way because there's an insatiable want for all kinds of seafood products, and scallops and ground fish, but lobsters are our most important export by far. And I think that we have it on the strategic plan is a priority to know more about it. And for good reason. I don't think we do know enough about it, even though the legislation obviously lies at the federal and provincial levels, mostly. But we do have a port that we share with 2 other units. That's important, and it's underfunded, right? And Small Craft Harbor and ports are underfunded as well, but not as much as we are underfunded here in the town of Yarmouth for our port. So that's one issue. Lots of landings there, and we need to get better at that. Transportation. We have though, the industry can't thrive without good transportation links. And we've all known the 103, there's only one way through, and there are a lot of, in fact, a lot of lobster tractor trailers that have flipped over on the Shelburne-Queens border, that sharp corner. Very, very dangerous. So that's a big issue. So we lobby for that. But again, all the value adds, I think we've got to have some more information. And I think once that comes back from the REN, I think we need to do some work about, to Patty Durkee's, Councillor Durkee's question about, well, what's this all about? I think it's a good one, because I think that's exactly what we need to determine. What our role is, what our steps are through that data collection and monitoring the data, and actually figuring out a way we can help, and really knowing what the way forward is. So I'm looking forward to seeing that data and talking about it more, and then perhaps moving forward with an enhanced study. I mean, focused on really what municipal government can do, because it's an important thing, and we need to know the facts so we can help the industry out. So those would be my comments.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and I'd like to thank Daniel to point that out to me. I meant there was only the 4 of us who represent fishing communities that actually have ports. I definitely know that there's fishers in each of one of our districts who use at least one of those ports. Also, I know in our districts also there's captains of fishing vessels who own fishing enterprises who fish out of the ports in town of Yarmouth, Lobster Rock, Marginal, and what's the name of the other wharf? Anyway, the 3 wharves in town, which are drastically underfunded, drastically in need of repairs, drastically in need of electrical upgrades, and it's important that we find this information out to try to help the fishing industry get the point across to the different levels of government that more funding is needed. At our last Yarmouth Area Industrial Commission meetings, I made a recommendation that we consult a electrical engineer to see how to upgrade, or what the cost is going to be to upgrade the electrical work on those wharves in the town, because they were done 30 to 40 years ago, and with the larger boats and the larger requirements of electrical power, the power sources that are presently there cannot handle what's going on. And by upgrading the electrical system just on that and those, the wharves in town was, hopefully would draw more berthage funding from other vessels who may want to enter there to do their business, and larger ones also. But there's, I know at the port in my community, Chicago Point, and I can almost guarantee it in Sanford and Port Maitland and Town Point and Pigneys Point. There's probably electrical problems in all those areas with the number of boats now and whatnot. So this information will be good to help convince government, different levels of governments, that more funding is needed to upgrade these wharfs to the very vital and important fishing industry in Southwest Nova. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Councillor Allen. I think it was really important for us to understand how this information would be used and to point out the issues that we do have with lack of funding in the region. And we all know that all of our wharves, and particularly the one downtown as well, that the Industrial Commission owns, have major issues, and that the governments have not been giving very much money to our facilities. And so I think it's a really good point for everyone, including the public, to know what direction that we are going with in terms of our strategic plan and Councillor Allen's recommendation.
All right, thank you very much, Council. And actually, we do have a wharf out in Big Carlton Lake. The SS High and Dry is docked there, and I'll take pictures to prove that to everybody. But on a serious note, it used to be. It used to be a lobster boat. On a serious note, though, yes, absolutely. The Municipality District of Yarmouth owns some properties through the Industrial Commission, deteriorating wharves that are deteriorated badly. We've had updates, and we know that needs to be a lot of money put into those, and not only those that the Municipality District of Yarmouth owns, but also all small craft harbors all across our region, everywhere from Pigneys Point around up through to Sanford, Port Maitland area. That's something that I believe that we could use with what Councillor Allen has suggested and what CAO Brooks has already updated us on. There is a lot of information out there. We don't know exactly what we have, but until we know what we know, then we'll move forward from there. And it would certainly help us with lobbying the federal government, who I think just recently put some money out towards harbors in wharves and stuff. So I'm really not sure. I haven't looked into it that much. Maybe we could use that as leverage. Any little bit that we can get helps. There's I don't know exactly how many lobster licenses are in Yarmouth County in District 34. I think it's 998-ish. Those are all $1 million businesses, independently owned. And I think it's very important that we help that industry and alert the proper officials out there that it's our lifeblood around here. One of the main backbones, it was said. So if there's no more discussion on that report, I will move on. Item number 6, item 6.1, CAO's report. You all have that in your package. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I have any questions, but I have a couple of comments. It's great to see that the Yarmouth Recreation is moving forward with their summer staff hiring and their programming. So hopefully all the COVID health guidelines will stay at bay and they can successfully implement everything and offer those to our residents. I'm looking through. Another thing that caught my eye was that we have a new fire chief start. That's in the report.
Fire inspector.
Sorry,
Councillor
fire
Herbert.
inspector. Yes, fire inspector starting the beginning of July. I was trying to find it through these 7 23 pages of documents. I read it and then I was trying to go back to it. So we have a new fire inspector starting the beginning of July, which I think is exciting. And I look at the development report and that is promising. So lots of good things happening for us.
Deputy Warden.
Yes, there's an update in here around the Lake Milo stretch work, and that's a great project and so forth. And thank you to Councillor Cushing for sitting on that committee and doing, certainly good work there. What I will say is I did notice in the provincial newspapers and CBC, I'm not sure which news source I got it from, but Port Hawkesbury got a considerable amount of provincial funding for active transportation. So perhaps we could have the CAO look into the details of that funding, and perhaps we could put that on the next committee of the whole as an agenda item to talk about where those dollars came from and how we could source some of those for that project. I think it was $7 million total, federal, provincial money, something like that. I'm probably misquoting a little bit, but it was of that magnitude. It was in the sort of $5 to $7 or $8 million for the project, and I think 8 or 10 kilometers of active transportation infrastructure. So it's really important we understand where the dollars came from so we can get our fair share.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Referring to Councillor Trevor Cunningham about the Port Hawkesbury funding that they got, I do know they've been working on that project for several years. So it did take them some time to get that, and it's quite a project that they've got going on there. I'd be anxious to get back up there to see what it's like.
Any more discussion on that? Once again, thank you, Councillor Allen.
I was just wondering if you need a motion to accept the CAO's report as circulated. If so, I'll make that motion.
Yeah, I do, actually. A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on the motion? I will say this before I call for the question is, thank you very much, Madam CAO. As you all notice, there are, on the Appendix A, motions of council. We're a busy council. There's a lot of stuff on there, and there was reference made to some of our council meetings being quite long, but we're also a very busy council. So, thank you very much, Madam CAO. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, we've mentioned a couple times how busy we are, and I think through the discussion around meeting schedules, I don't think anyone that's on this council wants to limit, presentations or discussion or anything. Actually, we're probably the ones driving it, and we're excited about it. It's just, time management is a thing for me, and I'm excited to be a part of this council, and I'm excited to see. I'm sure, I don't know what the CAO, how she feels about how long that list can get, but it's probably going to get longer actually throughout this meeting. And before Trevor mentioned it, I sent her an email about adding the active transportation trail on the airport stretch. So I'm excited about that, and being ready for when the province paves that in the next couple of years. So I'm excited for that work, and we're going to hopefully talk about that at committee of the whole, along with some safety issues on the Arcadia corner. Thank you.
Yes, time management is of the essence, and sometimes we are our own worst enemies. With that being said, if there's no more discussion, all those in favor and acceptance of the CAO's report signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. All right, item 6.2. I know Councillor Durkee had asked to have something put here. It says buildings, and I think it says, I can't read my own writing. I think it says derelict buildings. Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you,
have the floor.
Mr. Chair. I know this is in my district, and I believe it's in many of the districts, that we have a number of empty houses that haven't been taken care of for many, many years, and they're sitting there. And my big concern is that the owners do nothing with them, and the concern is that, you know, these are ripe for someone to light them on fire, and if people live next door, then that's a doubly concerned. So I'm just wondering if we have anything. I can't say that they're necessarily unsightly. Some of them are, definitely. If there's something that we can do through our development office to, I don't know, maybe it's something that we have to do in our municipal planning strategy, that something has to be done to have these buildings maintained or taken care of, or they need to be taken down. I know one particular building in Lake George I've driven through numerous times, and there's a building there and all the windows have been kicked out, and I have major concerns that this is very dangerous and unsightly. So I'm just wondering what we can do. And there are a number of them. There are 2 of them in Port Maitland. You know, what is it that we can do to have the owners of these buildings take care of them? And if not, then what's the next step?
So initial thoughts are, you know, we do leverage the dangerous and unsightly process when we can, and we have, you know, had council approved orders to remedy in the past. We have gone that far with them, and, you know, in some cases, we've put those expenses on that assessment account number. It's become eligible for tax sale, and we have sold those properties and we've recouped our money. In other cases, we haven't. And in fact, those costs that get posted to that assessment account number make it unsellable in some ways. You know, and over time that can go to a tender process, and then council can choose to accept a lower bid, and so there's options available. There's also powers in the Municipal Government Act for council to adopt a bylaw that speaks to those property maintenance standards. So in the section in the MJ that talks about your powers for bylaw making, actually derelict or vacant buildings is specified in there. So you do have that power. I think I've shared with council, you know, when we've talked about population trends and the mobility of citizens, you know, I've talked quite a bit about the homesteads that are in the District of Yarmouth, and, you know, what does that look like as properties pass through estates into a group of heirs, and there's estate issues, and so some of these situations manifest as heirs let legal processes unfold in order to deal with whatever the estate issue is amongst the heirs, and so some of those buildings would be included in that. So it's a complicated dynamic, you know, and as I always say to council when we talk about a policy or a bylaw, you know, we want to make sure we give time and thought to unintended consequences, and in something like this, it's really about, you know, enforcement. It's about the financial implications to the municipality, because at the end of the day, when we go the distance and we go to the courts and we get an order to remedy, that money is gone out of our general revenue, and it sits on, you know, it sits on the balance sheet as an asset, as a payable, but the cash is gone, and it's been paid for by all the other ratepayers. So we really want to have a measured approach to that. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
You still have the floor, Councillor Durkee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I'm just wondering then if it's something that, and I can make a motion that we instruct staff to look into possible bylaws. If I'm not necessarily saying these houses have to be taken down, but what I'm saying is if someone owns a house, then can we say that they have to be maintained, or there are consequences if they don't? I guess that's what I'm looking at, and what do other areas do for those situations? And it was interesting, there was a fellow driving through my neighborhood, and I'm the one that said I shouldn't be telling stories, and here I am. This is quick, a fellow going through the neighborhood from England, and he just said he and another person who has bought said he's so shocked that there are so many houses that are empty, some of these historic houses that aren't being taken care of. So just something I would like to see us look into further, and it's as much health and safety as it is seeing how awful they look.
So Counselor Durkee, are you making that a
I'm
motion?
making that a motion that we ask staff to look into maybe research what other areas do for empty homes, and if we need a bylaw to create consequences for leaving a home unoccupied.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Daniel Allen. There is microphones going, so there is a motion on the floor. So the first one up would be Counselor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Councillor Durkee made a good point. As you were talking about, there's probably houses in every district, and it popped in my mind, I know where there's one in my district. And now, excuse me, I think we have to, two things. Number one, if the house is vacant, it's been vacant for a number of years, then contact the owner and we have to deal with that part. But again, if the house is empty, but it's okay, but the property around it is well overgrown and whatnot, do we have any type of policy or bylaw saying that you're, I just use a statement that if, your grass is 3 feet high and it's not, shouldn't be like that, and you got overgrown plants that are encroaching on the highways, and you get, just unsightly looking, in our view, unsightly premises. However, the person that owns that property may think that, well, there's nothing wrong with that, I like it this way. So is there anything that we can properly define of what is what?
So I think that, Nova Scotia municipalities have struggled for decades about metrics that clearly define unsightly. That's the aspect of that whole body of law that I think, municipalities struggle with the most. Danger is fairly easy to determine on certain levels. Unsightly is difficult. Now, I have been involved in a dangerous and unsightly file years ago where the grass was very high in a particularly dry summer, and I believe it was near, I think it was a sawmill. There was heat being generated and there was a fear of fire. And so council did move to undertake a remedy there and put the charges on the assessment account number. But, unsightly, it's a difficult thing, when you live in communities where there are homeowners associations and there are covenants in place and all that, in densely populated areas, you see more of those property standards pieces. In rural communities, it's definitely much more subjective.
I believe that's also what the motion is going to be speaking to, just doing some research on where it is with that. The next one on the docket is Councillor Nick Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and interesting discussion. And I guess for me, the two things I wrote down is it's safety and responsibility versus upkeep and unsightly. So we've had a number of suspected arsons in the area, and who is going to now be responsible to clean up those areas? So my question is, well, I don't really have a question, I guess through this process, are people, knowing that a house has been derelict for 5 to 10 years, knowing that this is a possibility, who then becomes responsible? Because if we're going to be the ones in the end to clean it up, is there anything we can do proactively to make sure that that doesn't happen to us? It's kind of like protecting our own selves. Is there,
Well, our standard process is when a concern is raised, we try to handle things informally. So if any of the councillors get an email or a phone call, we go and, we start with the conversation, we start with the collaboration. And then we even do that when a formal complaint is lodged. We always start with collaboration, because if somebody can voluntarily remedy a situation, it's better for everybody involved. But then after that, there is a prescribed process. So there's formal notifications, there's timelines, There's questions coming back to council for direction, orders to remedy, which is basically the municipality undertakes the work. That has to be approved by council. So, yep, there are several steps.
Just one more, I guess, just further to the discussion, and is, for me, it's, is there any way, like, through bylaws to make sure that somehow, if you know that a building's been derelict, because I have some in my community, and some of them I actually think are add to how rural the community is and the way that it looks. I have no issue with them, but the moment someone torches them and we become responsible to clean them up, that to me is the issue. So is there a way through bylaw to make sure that people that own these properties either insure these properties or are able to be responsible for them if vandalism or arson occurs?
So when we do the research, we may find that maybe that is a requirement in a bylaw that, a property is okay vacant as long as the owner can demonstrate it's adequately insured.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right? That could be a piece that we might find.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Deputy Warden, I believe, is next. Yes, you have the floor.
Right, and it's a complicated mix of issues, but I do agree. So on the, I guess on the one pole, there are those very, very serious cases like arson that have been mentioned, and dangerous and unsightly, which is generally easier to deal with. But there are a lot of those issues that are coming up, maybe especially in my district, not that it's not in other folks' district. Mine's probably the most densely populated, and I'm looking to the review of the MPS and or Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw through the PAC, Planning Advisory Committee, and all the work we're doing on with that. So I think many of these questions are probably better researched over a longer time in a more cohesive manner through those reviews and through public input, because we are a rural community, although some of our communities are becoming a little bit more densely populated. There's a lot of new construction. Different folks have different views on what should be on people's properties and how sort of they should appear and that type of thing, and how much storage there should be and offsets and all those types of things, and we all know that people have different views, and I know everybody's view is their view, and sort of is informed by their values and outlook and histories and those types of things. So I guess they're it's neither wrong nor right, but I think we have to have a reset maybe on what the communities want in general. We are a very, very rural community, relatively speaking, and we're not going to be having gated communities. I don't think we want that with all sorts of restrictive covenants and all those types of things. So on the one hand, it's in some cases there may be some room for some additional policy and bylaw work and some additional restrictions, but we have to be careful that people's right to their property is also respected. So there is a clear balance there. Having said that, I think it is worthwhile maybe looking into individual circumstances in the short term, but in the long term, I think we really do need to look at over the next year that process that we're going through to try to strike a better, maybe a new balance. I wouldn't say a better balance, but a new balance, a new way of looking at how land's used and how properties are maintained and those types of things. But having said that, I think the root cause of this, a lot of the properties are maybe folks don't have enough revenue to fix the roof. We know there's a problem with larger homes, and as people get older, sometimes incomes drop. Roofs are very, very expensive. We all know that's sort of where it starts. People get a leaky roof and the home deteriorates from there, and then they move out of it essentially. There are many of those, so that's a problem. We're going to probably have to work with the province more closely to try to help that situation, remedy that situation. But generally speaking, there are probably no easy answers. Taking them over, and it costs the municipality money to tear them down, that type of stuff. Sometimes we do remedy the situation that way. That's a last resort. Having said that, I think building our community in terms of economic growth is the surest way to improve those those outcomes, so I think we need to look at lots over the next, and we can look at that through our strategic plan. So anyway, that's what I'll have to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your Deputy Warden. In effort to constrain time and discussion, most generally, if people don't know that, most generally a speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The Deputy Warden went 5 minutes and 2 seconds, just for the record. Councilor Daniel Allen.
He's cheap with time, too. I'll try and stay under 5 minutes. I'm going to be in support of this motion that Councilor Durkee made as far as the investigation part. And I'm going to try and summarize what I think Trevor just said. And I just don't want to get into too slippery of a slope in telling people how they must maintain their property. I know property owners right now feel very regulated, and adding to that is going to add to a stressful situation. So I just want to make sure that I agree, we have too many derelict homes around. We have some beautiful homes that are empty, and you hate to see them go. We had one in Arcadia that I always thought was a beautiful home that burnt this past spring. But I just, we just got to be careful when we get into this as to how far we want to go. That's my summary. I don't want to get into telling homeowners, whether their grass has to be 6 inches or, we don't want Roger out there with a ruler. I know I'm exaggerating, but I just don't want to get into that type of, me personally, I don't want to get into that type of enforcement, but I think helping, communicating with homeowners that have empty homes and things like that to see if there's a way to keep them secure and definitely safe. Safe would be my main concern, that there's not kids in them and people getting hurt. So anyways, I think I was under 5.
Very true. Councilor Patty Durkee.
Yeah, my concern mainly is with these vacant homes that, it's not about people who are living in their homes as much it is about these vacant homes that have been sitting around for years, and nothing's being done. And again, it's the whole health, safety, fire, and people who live next door to one of those homes. It's not fair to them when they take really good care of their property and then there's this empty home that's deteriorating.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more discussion? Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, item 6.3 was asked to be brought up here, and Councilor Daniel Allen, you talked about slippery slopes. The description I have here is mowing of lawn. So Councilor Allen, you have the floor.
Well, I'm about to almost contradict myself. Not quite, though. My concern isn't with how people are taking care of their properties. I think there are a lot of people that take a lot of pride in their properties. As you drive around our community, there are. But we have what I consider a very large, I don't want to call them group, but we have a very large motorcycle presence in the town of Yarmouth. There are a lot of riders. And I was taking a ride the other day, and I was going down through Sanford, and there was a gentleman mowing his lawn, and he wasn't mowing his lawn, to be honest with you. He was driving down the side of the ditch, probably 200 feet from his lawn. And all the grass he was mowing, he was spraying onto the road. Anyone that's been on a motorcycle knows how dangerous that can be. I think it's probably dangerous on a bicycle. It's like getting on ice. And I've seen it in more than one occasion and at different people's properties, and I don't fault them. It's just a matter of mowing along the edge of the road in a different direction and shooting it back onto your lawn. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do we have any type of policy to enforce something like that before we have a really serious accident on our hands somewhere in our municipality? It's a safety issue. It's pure and simple a safety issue. I know there's some type, I thought there was some type of rules about when you plow your driveway, you're not supposed to, in the wintertime, you're not supposed to plow out and across the road. I don't know if it's a RCMP law or if it's a bylaw, and would we have anything on our books as far as that?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Councillor Allen, you're quite right, it is a safety issue, and it actually, there is regulation in Nova Scotia to monitor that, and it's through the, I think it's the Traffic Act. So because it's in the, when you get right on the edge of the road, you're in the right-of-way. And so I do know that there are charges that can be laid by the RCMP when you discharge material from your yard into the roadway, whether it's snow, from plowing snow in your driveway, or it's lawn clippings. And I know that because I might know somebody who got a ticket for it sometime, at some point. It is illegal in Nova Scotia to do that. So, you know, it wouldn't be the municipality. It's not our piece of law, it's provincial law. So, you know, we probably would have to reach out to the RCMP. If you saw it happening consistently and we could give them a civic address, then they might be able to go have a conversation for us.
We have a bunch of people ahead of you. You had the floor. You shouldn't have turned your microphone off. You'll come back down your slippery slope. Councillor Lauren Cushing, you're next.
Oh, end of the line.
End of the line. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Don't worry, guys, it'll be your turn in 5 minutes. So no, I just, I mean, it probably is, as our CEO said, it's likely governed, and it is governed through provincial legislation, certainly, that issue. But having said that, and I'm going to contradict myself because I generally don't like to get too wrapped up in provincial issues, but it is an important piece. I know a lot of cyclists in the area, and there are a lot of motorcycles, and it may, and I mean, I'm sure people that are clipping grass are just doing that inadvertently, and maybe not know the danger. It's like the center line when it's wet is dangerous for a motorcycle, right? Like it's just dangerous, and that grass is wet. So having said that, maybe we could, as public service, just pop that in one of our newsletters, just saying that you know, you may be unaware, but just try to avoid clipping, you know, ejecting the grass clippings on the roadway, because it is dangerous to cyclists and motorcyclists.
Thank you very much. And anyone out there watching wondering why I don't turn on a councillor's microphone, I don't have any way to do that I know of. Maybe IT can show me how, if it is an option on here. So my apologies to Councillor Allen and Councillor Lauren Cushing. The next one on my docket is Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with Trevor. That was going to be my suggestion. Visual education works. I can still picture the TV commercial of the motorcycle on the ground and the guy mowing his grass behind him. I'm a cyclist, as hard as that is to believe. And we were out the other night, and a guy had grass from one side of the road to the other, coming through Brooklyn. So, you know, I think it is a serious concern. I think we can help educate that, and I think we meet with Officer or Sergeant Lacroix at some point in the near future, and we can probably advocate to him as well, or through the Police Advisory Committee. So we'll carry that forward. Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Okay, the next one on the docket would be Councillor Daniel Allen. No, Councillor Lauren Cushing. My apologies. You have the floor, Councillor Cushing.
I won't touch a button. Okay. I agree with everything that's been said tonight about the dangers of the grass clippings going onto the road. But in a lot of communities, I'll see the individual will take their personal lawnmower and go along the shoulder of the road, feeling that they're doing the community a favor by cutting the grass along there. But you know, if they just blew it in the ditch, it would be better. But I think some of them are not aware of the dangers of it, and by putting it in our newsletter, I think it's a good opportunity. I will say, and I like to stress that the TIR have been out mowing the ditches, or the sides of the road and down into the ditches, which is even more than what they've done before. So that will eliminate a lot of people blowing grass or snipping into the road. But yes, it is a problem, and it is a problem for plowing snow across the road throughout the county. I know from experience in plowing snow within town, they're always watching us, make sure that we don't put snow onto the streets of town. So we're very cautious of how we plow snow in throughout the town and whatnot. So yes, I think if we put the information into our newsletter, as Councillor Trevor Cunny had mentioned, I believe it would be a good thought. And thanks, Daniel, for bringing that point up. And I don't think it was a slippery slope. I think it was a good point. Thank you.
A lot of references being made to slippery slopes. Councillor Daniel Allen.
Well, I want to say thank you, Mr. Chair. You don't have to apologize for me turning my light off. On a whole other note, I think you can see just how happy everyone is to be back in person as opposed to being on Zoom. It works great, but it doesn't compare to a meeting like this as far as I'm concerned. That's my own opinion. But in saying the newsletter, I'm just wondering if there's something we could put on like our Facebook page, something that council could share just to get it out there, because this is motorcycle season right now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was maybe going to take a little creative license with the discussion and use our electronic media and maybe set up a couple of recurring messages over the course of the summer, because the next newsletter won't go out till the fall, so it'll be a little bit late.
And that, I guess that's where my thought was going. So, and I also, as far as Nick is concerned, I did see him out cycling the other day, and I didn't recognize him, but it was him. I almost hit him. But I seen him at the last minute.
Okay, so I guess Councillor Nick Hilton, you're going to be bringing it to the next Police Advisory Committee meeting, and staff will be doing up a little bit of a social media buzz, so keep an eye out for that and start sharing on your social media pages. Once again, my apologies. I should apologize in regards to turning off mics and stuff. During Zoom meetings, sometimes it's very difficult to also, as a chairperson, to notice who's putting their hand up. At least this keeps it a little bit more fair, so it's not my fault if you turn off your own microphones. Okay, moving on. That's all the new business items. Those were the two added. Moving on to correspondence. There's no correspondence for action. Item 7.2, for information, there was a letter here from Minister Keith Irving, Environmental and Climate Change Public Engagement. Item 7.2, response from Minister Keith Irving, extended EPR. Item 7.3, correspondence from Mr. Douglas Phoevens. And item 7.4, World Elder Abuse Day, which I have also noted in my warden's report. Moving on to item number 8, reports. 8.1, legal entities. Is there any reports or committee chairs that wish to speak on any of those items in item 8.1? We have Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Let's see, so 8.1.3, Western Counties Regional Library. We just had a 3-part meeting with the library and the AGM, which was very successful. The Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association, if you watch CTV, you should be seeing some amazing ads that have been coming out for our area. The pictures are outstanding, and it just makes our community look wonderful. We had an AGM with them as well. And the Western Regional Enterprise Liaison and Oversight Committee, we have an AGM on June the 29th.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durkee. Next one on the thing is Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a report from the Regional Solid Waste Authority, which we mostly know as Waste Check. Staff have included the last copy of the minutes and the agenda from the last meeting. And as you can see on page 6, there is an extensive, there's always extensive conversation about litter, so it's not just here at this table, it's at Waste Check as well. And at the last meeting, they were proposing, and they actually showed us a sticker that community residents who do community cleanup, or you just are out in your neighborhood and you pick up a bag of garbage, not only can you get the bag and the gloves from Waste Check, but hopefully in the near future there'll be a sticker that you can put on that clear bag and put it with your regular trash, so that the people who come to remove your waste will see and know that it's not your regular waste, that it is a community cleanup project. So that was kind of encouraging for us to see that, you know, people who are cleaning up in their neighborhoods aren't being penalized and not having their garbage taken away because it isn't their garbage, it's the community garbage. And we talked we always talk about extended producer responsibility, and there was a correspondence from the minister on that. So the report is in there, all 13 pages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll speak to the Yarmouth Area Industrial Commission. We actually had an audit committee meeting this morning. We're tying up some year-end financials, but the biggest news would probably be that we are planning in the next couple weeks or in the next month a planning strategic strategy session to look at what the future of the Industrial Commission, i.e. the ports, medical clinics. We do lease the school board building as well. What all those assets would look like moving forward for all three councils. So the Industrial Commission is probably one of my, and it's not for everyone, I've been told, exciting folders. I grew up playing hide and seek in the Domtex building, so my father did a lot of work there, and I got to hang out there quite a bit. So it was interesting. You'll never find anyone, or would have never found anyone. But anyway, I'm excited to move forward with that portfolio and see where we can go, especially the work on the ports. Like Lauren mentioned, we're looking at an electrical engineer to come and see what work could be done to support the bigger boats and maybe increase some of our port fees. So it was a great meeting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have a written report in there in regards to the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation that happened on June the 2nd. One thing I want to point out, the next time we meet, it was brought forward to us where there's no citizen reps left on that. There's room for people to apply for a position to sit there. So when the advertisement comes out, make sure that we anyone that's interested watching, or if anyone knows anyone, to please encourage them to put their name forward. There's going to be some changes out at the airport working with Celtic Air, so I just wanted to point that out. If there's no more reports on item 8.1, the legal entities, we'll move on to item 8.2, advisory committee reports. So the first one up on this one would be Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an interim report from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Update there. One of the key things right now is accessibility survey that is live on our municipal website and also on our Facebook page. And I would encourage councillors as well as anyone watching to spread the word to ensure that as many residents fill that out. That is part of how we will move forward in presenting a report to council on our accessibility plan, that it will be due April 2022. And hopefully in the fall we will be looking for community engagement sessions. So we'll be planning those on how to advertise, how we're actually going to hold those in person, Facebook, live, what kind of avenue we'll be doing to make sure that we're inclusive and accessible to the people who we need, who we want to hear from. So again, the accessibility survey, spread the word, and there are also paper copies here at the municipal office. So if, as a counselor, you would like to pick up a couple, I'm sure they could provide them to you, and you could have them on hand and pass out in your community, or tell your residents that they can call the municipal office and there will be one mailed for them if they don't have a means electronically to fill that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just had a doctor recruitment and retention committee meeting yesterday, and we had a wonderful presentation by Rebecca Rose, and apparently she will be scheduling, if she hasn't already, to come and speak to council with her report on the past year, which I think you'll find very interesting. But just a couple of pieces that I'll share with you is that when we first started, we were losing more family doctors and specialists than we were gaining, which was not a good thing. But since we've started, we've gained 13 family doctors and 10 specialists. And one of the biggest issues that we're having right now is that we've had apparently 324 people have now joined our community. So the more people that join our community, the greater the list goes for people without doctors. The good news is that, or two things that of note that maybe people don't realize, is that we now have a nurse practitioner in the emergency department at the hospital, which is a huge help. And our emergency department is getting an overhaul, which we thank the province for doing that. And we continue to, I mean, even though COVID has happened, the recruitment has continued, and there are still some really good numbers coming forward, so we're really happy with that. And it's been noted that it's been really important, especially to the doctors in particular, that we have a community navigator right from our area. That's been extremely beneficial. So thank you. But very quickly, while I still have the mic, I'm just wondering, 8.2.3, our CAO committee, we haven't, I know we were supposed to do, I guess, evaluation a while back, and I'm just wondering if we're moving forward with that one, because we're a little behind.
Aha. I'll get to that as soon as every other meeting report is up. Okay, the next one up is Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm assuming I can comment on someone else's report. That's the way this would work. All good. So I actually yesterday had contacted Rebecca Rose, the community navigator, as well, and it was a wonderful conversation. I had a resident that had was requesting information on our ER department and what our doctor, the staffing amount looked like, and some of the stats that she gave me was absolutely incredible. We have departments that are fully staffed for the first time in maybe ever, or no, not ever, but in years. And throughout the Tri-Counties, I think we're only missing one ER physician, one shared ER physician. So, and the expansion that to the ER that has already been announced, they wouldn't be doing that if we weren't growing. So at some point, when I used to work in the ER, we would have one doctor on call, and throughout the day they're looking at having 3 at certain times. So it's quite remarkable. And now to see another major announcement for the Cancer Care Center, just a lot of respect for Zach and the work that he's put into bringing those funds to our community.
Any other reports under advisory? To Councillor Durkee's point, if my phone was here, I'd show you that I have a message in there to email the CAO Advisory Committee and Darlene and the CAO to have a reboot of that committee. The reason why we haven't met, or actually we were, oh, that noise is off, was obviously because of the COVID-19 restrictions that come out. And now that we can meet in person in our own little groups, I wanted to get that done as soon as possible. It's not fair to the CAO not to have a report done. And that also includes all of us filling out a sheet and all council meeting. So that's where that stands. But that is coming. Geez, it's so quiet in here.
I know. It's amazing how
Councillor
much.
Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to comment on, I'm not sure if the public can hear the quiet in here now that the air exchange unit has been turned off, but it's kind of nice now. Anyway, my comment about the CAO review, I know that Councillor Hilton and I are new, and I've asked previously when I was first started, just if I could, if maybe I asked for myself, but I'll throw Nick under the bus too, to have have the report or the expectations of the CAO so that we kind of have a starting off point of where we should be. I know that there is a process in place, but just knowing what was laid out last year so that we kind of have a base of where we're moving forward. Like, or have the goals been met? Like what were the goals, like the end report? Yeah.
Yeah, this is starting to qualify for in-camera
Okay.
in regards to personnel, so that will be discussed if you wish in camera. All right, is there any more reports under advisory? Hearing none, we'll move on to ad hoc. Item Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Yeah, just quickly, the Mariner Center Expansion Committee, the minutes are kept separately, obviously, on the Mariner Center website, but it's been going well. We've established a share among the 3 municipalities, and we're working on diligently on scoping out the project to be able to apply for federal and provincial funding. So, looking forward to good things happening there, and getting that infrastructure built in the near term. And in the event, I guess the good news is the 3 municipal units are collaborating at a high level, and that's good news for the region.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Oops, I almost shut the button again. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Lake Milo Active Transportation Committee, it's an ongoing item, and Councillor Cunningham mentioned it. But I just want to thank Councillor Trevor Cunningham for advancing some historic pictures of the Milo stretch, as we call it, in the Villa St. Joseph. It was used to be the Pacific Hotel. They were passed on to our consultants, and it's probably good information to have. And it was very interesting to see those historic pictures. And I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but down at the Milo Boat Club, as you come down the stairs, there used to be a big picture of the Canadian Pacific Hotel, I believe it was, which is now the Villa St. Joseph, hanging there for years. And I don't know if it's still there, if it disappeared, or what happened to it. But anyway, there's a lot of good historic information along that area, and it's great to see that we are pursuing to bring back some history and make that place a very active place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more reports. We'll move on. Item number 9, the Warden's report. You all have that in your package. Unfortunately, during the COVID-19 restrictions, there was a bunch of events that normally happen. One of those was, I'll pull it up here, is in regards the Yarmouth Relay for Life. That's one thing that I was looking forward to, because as you all know, I'm a survivor. It's not a club I wanted to be part of, but I was looking forward to that, but I did attend it virtually. And also meeting dates and times, as you also can see, some days are not so busy, and those days I'm usually here. But other days, as we talk about meeting time and length, some days it's pretty intense. The amount of meetings that we all have one day, and every councillor notices that sometimes we have a lull, and then all of a sudden everything seems to happen at once. So my report there is online for anyone wishing to see. And we move on to item number 10, in camera. So I'm going to need a motion to move in camera. Moved by Counselor Nick Hilton, seconded by Counselor Daniel Allen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded?